Hey guys, Trey here. Wanted to do a kind of a stream of consciousness little forecast briefing for the upcoming few days of potential severe weather. We've got, as you can see here, lots of colors on the SPC outlook over the next 4 to 5 days. We have an enhanced risk today down in central and southern Texas, followed by what could be a potentially significant severe weather outbreak in Dixie Alley on Sunday. So wanted to kind of go through some things, take a look at least an initial look at some of the forecast models, some of the observed stuff, and kind of piece together what we might see this weekend. Of course, it's still a couple days out. Things will change for sure, and there's still plenty of uncertainty in the models and plenty of discrepancy between models. But things are starting to come together a little bit, so I wanted to kind of take a few minutes to discuss the next few days and go over some of the threats that certain regions could be facing over the next several days. So today, not going to go through too much about today. There's an enhanced risk down basically for including areas such as San Antonio, Austin, down basically towards southwest Texas, with a slight risk extending all the way down toward the Brownsville area. There's a sagging cold front. If we take a look at surface data here, make sure this is current. Yeah, there's a frontal zone somewhere in this region right here. You can see the wind shift, northerly, northeasterly winds to the north of the boundary. Then we have weak southerly or southwesterly winds to the south of the boundary. So there's some sort of a wind shift in here. Much cooler temperatures up here as well. Temperatures in the 80s, and even is that a 90 degree? Yeah, 90 degree station already down there in South Texas. So there's a frontal zone in here that's going to kind of stall out today, and will provide the focus for strong to severe storms. Very unstable atmosphere today. Cape exceeding 3 to 4,000 joules per kilogram, but the wind profile, at least the low-level wind profile, pretty darn weak. If we take a look at let's go ahead and take a look at the NAM for today. Just gonna go over this quickly. More concerned about the next several days, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. But if we go ahead and look at the NAM here, this morning's run just came in. Go ahead and zoom in on the southern plains. You can see that kind of the boundary there kind of stall out. And by 21Z, if we get a couple soundings here in the warm sector down south in South Texas, just you look at the photographs, very, very weak winds there in the low levels, and pretty straight photographs overall. Yeah, just kind of strange low-level winds there. You can see very weak, chaotic winds in the low levels. But we do have enough deep layer shear. Photographs are long enough for supercell development in this very unstable environment. You can see here this mixed layer cape of 4,000 joules per kilogram on this sounding. A little bit more here, just over 4,000. So deep layer shear definitely there for some supercells, potentially with large hail, given the steep lapse rates and large instability aloft. But the tornado threat is pretty much non-existent today. Of course, can't rule it out. There's a 2% for today, but these low-level wind profiles do not suggest tornadic supercells, but definitely a threat for large hail and damaging winds with any of these supercells. As you see here from the SPC map, a 30% significant area for that enhanced region in southern and central Texas. And with the dew points being so large, but the temperature dew point spread being so large, those soundings were showing like 93 over 73 temperature dew point spreads. High LCLs, very water-loaded downdrafts could promote some wet microbursts and damaging winds with these storms as well. Tornado threat, again, non-zero, but probably not going to happen with the lack of low-level shear there. So now let's take a look at this weekend period, Friday through Sunday. We have a marginal risk out for day 2, which is tomorrow, Friday, for southeast New Mexico into parts of west Texas, all the way up toward Lubbock, down south to Fort Stockton and Del Rio. So let's take a look at our morning maps here. 12Z, 500 millibar pattern. Big time close low, centered over the Great Basin region, the pretty much Las Vegas at the center of that upper trough there. Pretty strong jet max rotating around that. We also have this trough, the secondary trough out ahead of that, with a very strong jet max rotating around that. Um, this is going to eventually move its way on inland toward the Great Plains and southeast over the next few days. And it's going to be the main driver for severe weather over the next few days as well. So let's take a look. The overall pattern here, pretty short wavelength. So we would expect this to move off to the east, but we're going to need this trough here to move out of the way. And if we look at the NAM, let's go ahead and zoom out here to the entire United States. So you can see that trough here, analyzed on the 12Z NAM, and the stronger trough, positively tilted trough out near the Great Lakes. We're going to need that trough near the Great Lakes to move off before this secondary closed low here that we're watching is going to be able to move inland. And you can see here over the next couple days, it just sits there over Southern California, Southern Nevada, the Great Basin area. It doesn't move that much at all. So tomorrow, Friday, probably going to be more of a dry line day with kind of nebulous forcing for ascent in the synoptic scale here. This piece of energy from the trough lagging off well to the west, so probably going to be pretty much mesoscale forced, i.e. along the dry line. But then as we go into Saturday, this trough finally gets to move onshore and into the southern Great Plains and then into the southeast. But we'll stick with Friday here for the time being. So again, pretty much going to be dry line forced, I believe. There probably are a few short waves rotating around this as we look. Let's go down to 700 millibars. It's the level we look for short waves on, and you can see a couple little sort of enhanced speed maxima here. That could definitely help provide some synoptic scale ascent to help out with just the mesoscale ascent that we were talking about. Probably not going to get cyclogenesis here because the speed max is not quite ejecting into the plains yet, going over the Rockies. So don't think surface cyclogenesis is going to be a big time player here. We may get some in the eastern New Mexico vicinity because there is some stronger wind moving across the Rockies there on Friday afternoon. But I would suspect the bulk of cyclogenesis to be sometime probably early Sunday morning, late Saturday night, early Sunday morning. And if we look at our surface pressure fields here, the contours are isobars here, and not seeing much in the way of cyclogenesis here. Yeah, there looks to be maybe some up in Colorado there. Yeah, there does look to be some cyclogenesis up in Colorado. I guess as the Great Lakes trough departs, there's still going to be some strong westerly flow aloft going over the Rockies there. So we do get some cyclogenesis over southeast Wyoming and eastern Colorado. But as far as the southern plains goes, probably going to be removed from the main cyclogenesis area here Friday afternoon. So it's going to be probably, yeah, pretty much dry line forced is all I see here on the NAM here. If we look at, let's take a look at our surface data actually right now again, so we can see where our moisture is. So as you would expect, north of the cold front, dew points pretty marginal here, mid 50s to 40s out in the Texas Panhandle, even low 30s, upper 30s into Oklahoma. But right down here, we've got very, very moist air. 77 dew point here at that station right there. Corpus Christi 80 over 75. Brownsville 86 over 71. San Antonio area, mid 70s dew points as well. So the greater moisture, not that far off. Not going to take much return flow to get strong, good-looking dew points up into the target area for tomorrow. So I think as we do get cyclogenesis here in eastern Colorado overnight into tomorrow, or excuse me, yeah, up in Colorado tomorrow, we will get some surface response. The winds will back here and start bringing these 70s dew points, upper 60s, 70s dew points into the southern Texas panhandle. How far it goes is going to be a question, especially with lots of convection here overnight. That's still in question. But I do think we will get some increase in dew points here, probably into the maybe mid to upper 50s, I think is reasonable to assume, since the surface response won't be that strong given the surface lows all the way up here in Colorado. I think we will get some at least marginal moisture return into the southern panhandle, southeast New Mexico, and up against the Davis Mountains here near Fort Stockton for tomorrow. So, and as we take a look at the NAM here again, we see those dew points. Yeah, not much in the way of moisture return overnight. The NAM not very bullish at all on moisture return, actually bringing just about upper 40s dew points to the Midland area. And the better dew points confined down to the Mexico-Texas border. Uh, Looks like that cold front starts to accelerate and wipe all the 70s dew points offshore. So that is concerning for tomorrow at least. But let's take a look at the HER actually. 12Z HER, see what it shows for moisture return. Just kind of gonna look at a few different models here for moisture return, because I do think it's plausible we get some moisture advection. Yeah, and we see at least low 50s dew points in here by Friday afternoon. You can see where those storms blow up. I think definitely the terrain will help here. The Davis Mountains and the higher terrain of southeast New Mexico are going to need to assist in getting storms going. These dew points pretty marginal. Low to mid 50s I think is definitely possible for tomorrow here in this region. And again, how far north this moisture moves is going to be uh, still in question. We'll definitely know better tonight into tomorrow morning. So tomorrow looks pretty marginal. Definitely could be some supercells here. If we look at the wind profile, let's take a look at the NAM. Let's look at some forecast soundings here. Probably going to be very high-based storms, given that the dew points are only in the low 50s and temperatures probably are going to warm into the probably mid 70s to 80s out here. Look right on the dry line there, Fort Stockton, Alpine, Marfa area. Yeah, pretty meager Cape, as you might expect with such weak moisture return. And photographs appear to be long and straight. Not much turning in the low levels. Again, that surface response, the low is all the way up in Colorado. So we're going to need to get moisture all the way up into probably the Texas Panhandle to have a significant shot at severe storms tomorrow. And let's take a look at a couple of HER soundings here, just for giggles. Here, let's zoom into South Texas, and if we go to our forecast loop and we move ahead, we do see storms here fire off the higher terrain of the Davis Mountains by midday, mid-afternoon. And let's take a look at a sounding right out ahead of those guys there. Probably going to be high-based, as we said, with that meager moisture return. Dew points only in the low 50s. If we can get the sounding to load here. Yeah, 80 over 52. That is very high-based. Tornado potential probably going to be very low tomorrow, but you never know with the higher terrain out there. Will definitely help, but that doesn't look like a very favorable temperature dew point spread for tornadoes. We do have lots of deep layer shear, a good amount of deep layer shear, but the photographs again long and straight. So probably large hail would be the main threat, and maybe some downburst winds given the high LCLs. So that's tomorrow, and then Saturday. Let's look at Saturday. We expect this 500 millibar trough to move finally Saturday to the east. At that point, we should get cyclogenesis to the lee side of the Rockies here, somewhere in southeast New Mexico, maybe eastern New Mexico in general. Definitely should get surface cyclogenesis there as the trough moves over the Rockies. Let's go to our NAM 500 millibar map here, and you can see as it ejects, it definitely digs down deep there. It's all the way down into Baja California, the trough axis. But there's our speed max. We should get cyclogenesis somewhere in here uh, Saturday afternoon. Yeah, you can see there we have that low, our low, surface low up in Colorado, and then we have probably a secondary sort of reflection, surface reflection there down here, West Texas into Mexico. But it's all kind of one, kind of will conglomerate into one sort of surface response there, big time, big surface low out there. Um, at that point, our surface wind should really start to back, and we should start to get really strong moisture advection at the surface. Yeah, you can see the winds there strengthen pretty significantly there along in central Texas there. And so our moisture advection should be strong as well on Saturday. And yep, you see we get definitely some more moisture to move in there. Very kind of small instability axis there up into northwest Texas, into Oklahoma even. Our deeper moisture still confined to central and southern Texas. Our 70s dew points do return here into the San Antonio area, out toward Houston, Galveston, Corpus Christi. But we do get some reflection along the dry line slash kind of prefrontal surface trough there. And we should also have an increasing low-level jet for Saturday as well, which we won't see on Friday. Yeah, you can see after dark there we do have definitely a surface or a low-level jet response after dark. So that should help increase the shear, especially after dark there in our target area. So we kind of have two targets here. We would have the dry line, that kind of narrow tongue of moisture in up into southwest Oklahoma, northwest Texas. Take a couple soundings from there. And wind profiles definitely have improved. A little bit of interesting stuff there in the thermodynamics, a little bit of an inversion there, but that seems to be a NAM issue. Sometimes too strong with the inversion, with the capping. But that's a decent wind profile. Definitely a tornado wind profile there with strong veering winds in the low levels, veering to almost west-southwesterly at the upper levels. So I can definitely see a couple supercells there in the east of the dry line there, and in the warm sector, where our strongest shear will probably be ahead of that, where the speed max is located. Let's take a sounding by San Antonio. Would expect, wow, okay, that's an interesting sounding there. Lots of turning in the low levels. As you can see, stronger winds aloft there because that's where our speed max is focused. A little bit of an inversion there, but again, I think that's a NAM issue. But we do have a highly unstable environment, 2,000 joules per kilogram of CAPE, and that's an interesting sort of hodograph. Mostly long and straight. We do have lots of turning there in the low levels, though. So I definitely could see some tornadic supercells down there. The problem with the southern target is there is likely to be lots of cloudiness and convection in the morning as that speed max enters the region. And it's also very moist. Dew points in the 70s. Temperature dew point spreads very small, 75 over 72. So we could have very water-loaded cores, water-loaded downdrafts in these storms. So we could be seeing more of an HP mode down here, whereas farther to the north we could be seeing a more classic supercell mode. But let's go ahead and take a look, see if we have morning precipitation. I would expect, kind of with a setup like this, kind of a nebulous sort of forcing, surface forcing mechanism, and a weak cap, you would see lots of convection in the morning. And you can see by 18Z we have just stuff blowing up here in central Texas. That could hamper things come Saturday night. But again, some of these storms down here, these could be strong to severe storms here. But you do see some evidence of convection here east of the dry line, up in western Oklahoma. We could even see some down here in northwest Texas. So something to keep an eye on there for sure. Again, I would think the mode down here is a little bit messier down in central Texas, since the surface mechanism is kind of nebulous there. The surface forcing mechanism, kind of nebulous there. It's just kind of a big, broad, warm sector, kind of a diffuse-ish dry line. And again, probably the mode will be HP down here with any supercells that can sustain themselves. but the shear is there for tornadoes, and I think that will be resolved. That little uh, cap there will be resolved, I think, as we get closer to the event. I think this is just a NAM thing. But we do see steep lapse rates aloft, so large hail could be a problem, although um, maybe not as much of an issue as the strong downdraft issue. Um, but we could see a couple tornadoes down there as well. Just fear that the mode might be a little bit messier. Whereas up north, a little more classic mode, not quite as wet of an environment, if you will. Yeah, 70 over 60. That'll get the job done with adequately curved photographs there. Definitely some lots of low level curvature there. So again, I think this will be resolved. This little inversion there. It's kind of a NAM bias I've seen, but that definitely keeping an eye on Saturday, as is the SPC. They've got a big old slight risk out for much of northern, central, and southern Texas, from basically the Red River all the way south toward the Corpus Christi area, and even as far west as Del Rio. So something to keep an eye on. They do have a marginal outlook for the pure dryline storms up extending all the way into north central Kansas there. So enough moisture. They're seeing enough moisture getting up there into north central Kansas for potentially some dryline storms up there. So we'll have to keep an eye on Saturday. Sunday looks like the big day. Day 4 outlook here. They've got a 30% area for significant severe out in parts of Louisiana, into southern Mississippi, southern Alabama, even into Georgia. So the southern Gulf Coast region under the gun here for severe storms, potentially significant severe storms on Sunday. So let's take a look. I want to take a look at a few different models here, not just the NAM. I know we've kind of been relying on the NAM here for kind of these short range days, but this is the big day, so we'll take a look at multiple different models here. So 500 millibars, this is the NAM. We can see that trough moves inland, our speed max, and as it moves inland, take a look at that. You can see it's positively tilted there as it's over the Baja, and then as it moves inland, it really goes negative tilt, really pretty strongly negative tilted there, with a with strengthening winds aloft there up into Dixie Alley there. If we look at 850, we should get that surface low. Again, that surface response to continue to strengthen. And we should have a strong low-level jet on Sunday. Wow. I mean, that's incredible. That is, 77 knot low-level jet up into Tennessee with 50s and 60s down here in Mississippi and Alabama. That is big time. Whenever there's a low-level jet that strong, you really have to pay attention. Let's go ahead and zoom in here on the NAM. We'll take a look at the southeast, actually. See where our surface low is on Sunday. Yeah, there's our surface low. Wow, lots of backing in the warm sector. Those are 15, 20 knot surface winds out of the south-southeast. That is big time there if we can get discrete supercells here. That is big time. The wind shear profiles are going to be off the charts here. Let's take a look at our moisture. That should not be a problem with as strong as the low-level wind profiles are in bringing moisture northward. And yeah, oh my goodness, wow. That is pretty insane. Let's take a look in the Louisiana Delta there, the Mississippi River Delta in Louisiana. Wow, yeah, lots of turning with height there in the low levels. The thermos look a little strange, but I think that will be resolved. I think that's probably a result of some morning convection going on. And again, it's still 3 to 4 days out, so we're still going to have to resolve some stuff in here. But a little bit of weirdness with the thermal profiles, but the wind profiles, especially in the low levels, are classic Dixie strong tornado producers, even though a little bit of veer back veer in this sounding. Let's take a look. Let's go to 0Z. Let's go up here, up in northern Mississippi, closer to the surface low. Oh my, wow. I mean, that's just nuts, that turning in the low levels. That is no doubt going to produce strong tornadoes, whether or not it's a squall line, whether or not it's discrete storms. Strong tornadoes are going to happen with a wind profile like that. Again, a little bit wonky thermodynamics there, temperature dew point profiles, but lots of instability. And this actually could be the result of an EML, an elevated mix layer. a capping inversion that might hold storms off and keep the warm sector pretty clear throughout the day. Which, if that can happen, that is usually a differentiator between Dixie chase busts and big time outbreaks in Dixie. Usually, when you don't have that EML to keep the warm sector clear of convection through the morning and afternoon hours before storm initiation, usually the lapse rates are poor and it's all cloudy and it's a wash. But when you have an EML to hold morning storms off and you get the warm sector you can get pockets of sunshine in the warm sector. Watch out. We saw that on April 27, 2011. We saw it back in December 16th of last year. The long track Alexandria, Louisiana tornado, and then we had that tornado outbreak in Mississippi that same day. So usually with the big Dixie Alley outbreaks in the southeast, we see some sort of EML to hold things off in the early morning hours. So back to the setup here. This is going to be actually, let's take a look at the pressure fields here, because I don't think this is going to be a true cold front type event. It's going to be a prefrontal trough. So, wow, this is also a differentiator in Dixie Alley outbreaks, it seems. The main cold front is lagging all the way back out here somewhere. This is going to be, wow, look at that prefrontal trough, the pressure tongue right there. This is going to be prefrontal trough / pseudo dry line. So that usually appears in big Dixie Alley outbreaks. April 27, 2011, we had a dry line in play. That is going to be huge if we can get this to materialize. So it's not going to be mainly cold frontal forcing. It'll be this prefrontal trough. That is usually a big time deal in Dixie if you can get discrete storms on that. Now, can we get discrete storms from this? We see how the boundary's oriented northeast to southwest. And if we look at our bulk shear vectors here at the same time, you can see they're kind of parallel to that boundary. The bulk shear vectors basically are storm motion vectors. So that is a little bit in question whether we can get discrete storms, at least on the NAM here, because of our boundary parallel mean flow. But regardless, some of these soundings are just outrageous for Dixie Alley on Sunday. I mean, that's just nuts. You don't see that photograph very often. And I think if we can get discrete storms and the warm sector to remain uncluttered throughout the morning and early afternoon, watch out. This could be a big time outbreak. Let's take a look at the GFS now. The 12Z run is coming in as we speak. So let's see what it shows. It has that, again, that trough moving out and then it going majorly negative tilt on Sunday afternoon, even more so than the NAM. Big time speed max there. Lots of defluence aloft there to create divergence and then rising motion. Probably somewhere in the Mississippi, Alabama area would be the bullseye. Just looking at that map. Again, now let's take a look at how the GFS is showing the low-level jet out in the southeast. Wow. Oh my goodness, yeah. So not quite as favorable, a little bit more progressive than the NAM. The tornado threat would probably be at this point, the biggest tornado threat would be up in Alabama and into western Georgia instead of in Mississippi and Alabama. Mississippi, western Alabama. But the GFS has been an outlier here this year in particular. But with this setup specifically, it's been very, very fast. Very much a fast outlier compared to the Euro, the NAM, and the UK Met model as well. So I expect this will probably continue to slow down. That's been a bias with the GFS recently. So I do think this will continue to slow down, but nonetheless, this is a significant low-level jet it's showing. So if we look on Sunday afternoon, yeah, brings moisture all the way up here. Let's take a look right on that surface low there. And if we get this sounding to pull up, we'll see what the wind profiles look like. That is pretty wonky, probably convectively induced. Let's take a look back here, trailing into the warm sector a little bit. Mississippi, Alabama border. That was a strange sounding there, and GFS definitely not as bullish here on the parameters. It definitely has more veered winds in the warm sector, um, and not quite as large looping of photographs. But again, I don't usually trust the GFS too much with short range kind of events like this, and it has been performing very poorly with this the evolution of this last setup here in the Midwest, and then this setup. It's been just very weird. So I think the GFS is an outlier here. Let's take a look at the Euro. I don't believe this morning's Euro run is in, but we can take a look at last night's. And if we zoom out to the national, the CONUS, and we take a look at 500 millibars, Euro tends to do pretty well with these events as well. Euro is kind of my model of choice for kind of mid-range and longer range forecasting. So let's see what it does. It has, again, kind of the same progression, and then bam, wow, that is incredible. Major defluence aloft here over Dixie Alley, negative tilt trough, very strong speed max. That is very favorable. Looking similar to the NAM there. Let's take a look at 850, and we should get a pretty strong response. And my goodness, that is the understatement of the year. Looking a lot like the NAM there. 75 knot low level jet there into 75 knot low level jet into Tennessee and northern Alabama there. So that is definitely cause for concern. Let's look at moisture. Let's go zoom back in here to the southeast. Again, moisture shouldn't be an issue as strong as the surface low is, as strong as the moisture advection is, the winds are in the low levels. And yeah, we're getting 70s dew points into upper 60s, 70s dew points into Dixie. Let's take a look at a few soundings here from across the region. Yep, big time looping photographs there. Not quite as strong as the NAM, not quite as favorable as the NAM, but definitely in the tornado, potentially strong tornado range. A little bit of weakness in the lapse rates there in the low levels, like we saw with the NAM. So that could be something to watch that might temper things a little bit now that we have some more model consistency there with the sort of those weird profiles. Okay, look at that photograph. That is just nuts. That is nuts. Again, the instability out here is weaker, much weaker. But again, it's a very broad warm sector, and that's strong tornado parameter space. You don't need a lot of cape in Dixie, a lot of instability in Dixie to get strong tornadoes. So that is very, very favorable photograph for significant tornadoes. Maybe if we can get these thermodynamics to be resolved, I think, and we can get discrete storms. Remember, that's a question here. Let's look at that for our Euro model here. Here's our boundary. Here's our pseudo dry line, prefrontal trough here. Again, it's oriented north-northeast to south-southwest. And if we look at our bulk shear vectors at the same time, all right, little bit more favorable here with the Euro. Here was our boundary. The shear vectors are a little bit more orthogonal here. They're still pretty parallel, so discrete storms may be an issue here with it. A little bit more parallel or perpendicular to the boundary than the NAM, but still, this could be one of the major failure modes of this event could be storm mode if this continues. But warm sector, little beans out ahead in the warm sector, definitely not out of the question. Probably likely at this point, and so those won't have an issue. Probably with staying discrete since they're all by themselves out in the warm sector. So the Euro model looking pretty solid. The NAM looking pretty solid as well. Just for kicks, let's take a look at the UK Met. UK Met's been doing fairly well with this setup. This is last night's run. I'll just go ahead and do the low levels here. So the 500 millibar progression is pretty much the same between the models. There's 850, and yeah, very strong low level jet. Again, yeah, up 60, 70 knots out there. Here's our moisture. Let's just go out to 0Z Monday, which would be Sunday evening. Sounding here in the warm sector. That's big time. I mean, big time photographs. Again, the thermals are a little funky, so that's something to watch over the next few days. But I have a feeling those could be just model biases, and the fact that these are we're still 3 to 4 days out here, so those will probably be resolved. Again, as with any Dixie setup, the questions are still: can we get discrete storms? Will we get warm sector storms out ahead of the pseudo dry line, cold sort of pseudo dry line surface, prefrontal surface trough? And will there be crap vection in the morning that will ruin things in the warm sector? If we do have an EML that develops, like some of the model soundings were showing, a little bit of an inversion aloft, steeper lapse rates aloft, that could be very favorable for strong supercells with potentially significant tornadoes and an outbreak eventually, um, because that would hold off storms from firing in the warm sector in the morning, and keeping that warm sector clear throughout the day, and we can get some surface heating to help things along. Here's the trough. This will be the last thing I show, the trough ensemble, short range ensemble forecasting run. These are the significant tornado ingredients, basically showing where the probability of the SIGTOR being highest, where we might have the best potential for significant tornadoes. So here is, we go into Friday. Not much of a signal there, maybe a little bit there in West Texas, but probably a more marginal day tomorrow for Friday. And then Saturday, there's some signal here in central and southern Texas, and then maybe a very small signal up there in southwest Oklahoma. And then the big day, wow. There you can see where the ingredients are coming together. Somewhere in southern Mississippi, Alabama, 75% contour, and there's a little bit of a 90% contour there right in the middle, right in southern Mississippi there. You don't see that often at any forecast hour, let alone 3 to 4 days out. So this Sunday is definitely something to watch. Of course, it's Easter Sunday, so that is going to be potentially a problem for people if you have Easter Sunday plans and you live in Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, even western Georgia, even into Tennessee. Definitely need to keep an eye out and on the weather over the coming days and see how this forecast evolves, because this could be a potentially significant severe weather outbreak on Sunday if things continue to look like they are currently with the models. So again, we're still 3 to 4 days out, so lots of changes coming in the forecast, but right now it's looking pretty favorable for a severe weather outbreak, whether that's in the form of a big squall line with embedded tornadoes and significant damaging winds, or discrete supercells with a significant tornado threat out here in Dixie Alley. It looks pretty likely that we're going to get some pretty big significant severe weather here on Sunday in Dixie Alley. So if you live in any of these areas, again, keep an eye out for the forecast. Your local National Weather Service offices will have the most up-to-date information, as well as the Storm Prediction Center here. They will continue to update these forecasts as the day moves on, and also your local broadcast meteorologists on the news will monitor this threat as well. So for all of you out there, stay safe, stay healthy, keep an eye to the sky and an eye on the weather over the coming days, because we could have a pretty fruitful severe weather event unfolding over the next few days into this weekend. So stay safe, stay healthy, and we will see you under the next mezzo.